Welcome to Green Bay South. But Jordan, I think we kind of knew today would be the day based off of the schedule of everything. I'm a little surprised it's this early, but the Miami Dolphins have their coach.
Yes,
and it is now former Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. So, Jordan, I'm not going to take time to tell everybody how to feel about this hire. I'm not going to try and make people feel better about it. I'm not going to try and make people feel worse about it. I'm fine with the hire. I think at the end of the day, once it became obvious that John Harbaugh was not coming here, and to me, I hate to say it this way, but once we hired Jon-Eric Sullivan as GM, I kind of knew. We picked, and we said it last week, we picked Sullivan over everybody else, which to me is the most important thing.
And hold on, Brett. I want to address that. And I want to address that we're getting throughout social media and stuff like that. At the end of the day, none of us, not you, not me, not Jack and Rod 6794, not anybody else knows whether Jeff Hafley or not is going to be a successful NFL coach. The only thing we can do as Dolphin fans is root for him, is support him, and hope that he is better than the last couple coaches that we've had. If you're expecting we're going to bash the organization for hiring Jeff Hafley, this isn't the show for you. Okay? No. This is going to be a factual, detailed analysis of him, potential coaches he may bring, and what this team and what pieces on this team now make sense going forward. But I think that attitude of this is bullshit, we didn't get the right guy, we're hiring another first-time coach. Like, first of all, this isn't a first-time head coach. He coached in a Power 5 conference for 4 years. Okay. Was it college? Yes, but still, he had the title of head coach in an organization where it matters. Now, we can dive into the BC stuff, yeah, but I think that this is a very, I don't want to use the word safe, and I don't want to use the word high floor, but that's what this is. This is us in a new regime starting to move in a direction of solid, fundamental football that's going to be a building from the ground up, grassroots, build through the draft, grow your own guys. That's what we're headed towards. And when you're looking for that, I think Jeff Hafley is the best man for the job with the guys that were out there.
Yep. And as everybody sees, now joining us is Dive Bar's own Dolphins Twitter's second best scoops person in Bobby Shouse, because Bobby, unfortunately, everybody's favorite Jurassic Canine accessory, as he says, reported the hire 10 days ago. So Carpet Dinosaur does get to have his moment. Bobby, I saw your video you put out on Friday, I believe it was. And I think what you said it best, where you said, you're not going to be a hypocrite. You wanted Jon-Eric Sullivan as the GM. So you're not going to come out and say this is a bad hire. And I'll be honest, I'm open to it. He wouldn't have been my first choice. But I think he is a solid applicant for the job.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, no one. We would all be lying if we're like, yes, absolutely, home run hire. Holy shit, who's John Harbaugh? But yes, I came out first and foremost, and I think the GM hire was way more important than the head coaching hire, in my opinion.
And we nailed that.
Yes, and in my opinion, Jon-Eric Sullivan was the top dog available this offseason. The absolute juggernaut of the GM group. And so you go and get him, and we never get our guy, right? You go and get the top dog. And I'll touch on what I think that meant too, as far as how we end up with Jeff Hafley. But you go and get the top dog. I can't turn around now and be like, oh, you ain't got the guy I trusted the most, and now I don't like anything he's doing. Like, I can't do that. So, like, I will trust the process. I know that people have a bad taste in their mouth a little bit because of the BC stuff and some of this and some of that and the blowout against Chicago. That kind of irritated me, of course, but I do think he's well respected. I know he's well respected. People love him. Former players love him. I just got done watching the video of Logan Ryan talking about how he saved his career and was the best thing that ever happened to him. So,
yeah. And let's be fair about Boston College, and this has been my point. The last time they won more than 7 games was 2009. Like, sometimes you just got to accept that's who a school is. And I know, Jordan, in the past you talked about Indiana. What does Indiana have that Boston College doesn't have?
But in reality, the Indiana stuff is a jest and a joke, and like that is. And as somebody who's a UCF fan, like, listen, we had lightning in a bottle once too. I think Indiana's a lot more sustainable than we had it, but Indiana's in the midst of something that you can't compare other coaches to. But what I will say is there's a reason that Jeff Hafley made the decision to leave Boston College, and specifically to leave Boston College and take the Packers defensive coordinator job. When he did that, when he made that move, a lot of people in NFL circles said, okay, he's making that move to set himself up to be an NFL head coach because he understands he could have stayed at Boston College and won 7 games every year and would still be at Boston College today and would be looked at as the same way Pat Fitzgerald was looked at when he was at Northwestern and people wanted to take him and give him NFL head coaching jobs. Yeah. Props to Jeff Hafley for not only making that jump to go to the Green Bay Packers and be there for 2 years, but had them playing pretty damn good defense until they got some injuries across the board.
Yeah. And let's be clear too, when we talk about Boston College, they have one of, if not the worst facilities in Power 4 football. They have probably the worst NIL deal in Power 4 football. And they just don't, and they have high academic standards. And all you have to do is look at Jeff Hafley's introductory press conference when he came to the Packers. He flat out said he wants to coach. He does college football. When he left, it was the coach was recruiting his own players. I don't think people realize that is what the NIL and transfer portal has brought to people, where you're recruiting people on a yearly basis. Now, a lot of the bigger programs have GMs to do that. Boston College just doesn't have the money for a GM, so it's just one of those things. And we are also going to bring on our good friend Kev as well. But yeah, Bobby, what is your other thoughts with Hafley and what he'll bring?
Yeah, I think he can be a leader of men. I think that part I'm not really concerned about. I think he has the demeanor. He's a detailed oriented guy. He's very neat, organized, well thought out, planned for. So I think he can lead. And from what I hear, he wants to be the CEO archetype. He doesn't really want to be the defensive guy or the offensive guy. I think he wants to, and that's why I'm going to hold some criticism too, because I know y'all probably agree with this. I need to see your staff. You could have hired John Harbaugh. If he's bringing me as DC, we don't want John Harbaugh. So I need to see the staff you can build. And I do believe he could be that CEO type overseer. Keep structure, keep guys in line. No one's going to be showing up late thinking it's all good, willy-dilly. I do believe he can be that. I need to see the staff, and then we'll really go from there.
And that's one of the reasons I'm happy Kevin joined what he did. And we'll talk about candidates because in our Discord, Kevin and I, it's funny. I'm happy almost that it's Hafley because we've done a lot of legwork on talking about some of these guys that might be joining. And to me, I want and have wanted, and Bray, you've heard me say for 3 years, I want a head coach that is a CEO of the team. Yes. That is his role. I don't want a head coach that is bogged down in offensive game planning or defensive game planning because you're going to miss the other side of the ball. I am sick of the days of seeing Adam Gase when we're on offense or when we're on defense, standing back by the bench, talking to the offensive players. I want a guy that's leading the overall team. And it sounds like that's what Hafley's going to do. As far as the defensive side of the ball, I think there are 2 key names. The first one is obviously Anthony Weaver. And the other one is Tem Lakabu, who is the Jaguars linebacker coach. I know Carpet Dinosaur has been on that. He's been messaging me a little bit. And we've been going back and forth there. But I think that Jeff Hafley and Anthony Weaver have both worked together. They worked together in Cleveland. And on a staff that Mike McDaniel was also on. Fun fact there. But I think that if Anthony Weaver doesn't get a head coaching job and Hafley is able to present it as you're still going to be able to run the defense. Let's collaborate on scheme and things like that. But this is your unit, and no different than what he's going to do with an offensive coordinator, which I'll let Kevin get on. But I think that there is a real possibility that if Anthony Weaver doesn't get a head coaching job, he stays. The other name is Tem Lukabu, who's the linebacker coach for the Jaguars, who was one of Hafley's defensive coordinators during his time at Boston College.
Yep. And before Kev, I can let you talk. I would be shocked if the defensive coordinator is anybody but Lukabu. I think if Anthony Weaver doesn't get the Pittsburgh job, because I don't think he'll get the Ravens job, even though I know he's getting a second interview there. I do think he could get the Pittsburgh job. We didn't interview Anthony Weaver for our opening, and that's a courtesy we gave to Champ Kelly for our open GM spot. So I have a feeling Weaver's going to leave, but I would be shocked if it's anybody but Lukabu. Kev, what do you think? And what do you think of the hire first, and then what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, really the main thing on the hire is this is really the first time I think that the Dolphins have had a true vision between general manager and head coach. Because it felt like with
real quick, I'm
Adam,
just going to interrupt you there, Kev, just to go to this. That goes right into this, maybe nepotism hire. Jarrett, I don't think it's a nepotism hire. You look around, when you have a full regime change, the GM usually has a favorite of who he's getting. So you do want to have, as Kev was getting at, you do want that common vision. So let's be clear. Was this probably Hafley the whole time? Yes. I don't think anybody is naive enough to think that. But remember, when we hired Bill Parcells, we knew Jeff Ireland and Tony Sperano were coming. This isn't the same thing, but when we hired Adam Gase, I knew we were hiring Adam Gase. Like, you just knew it.
let me push back on this idea that like he's just a nepotism hire. He's just Jon-Eric Sullivan's buddy. That's why he's getting the job. Guys, he's like the third fucking best candidate on the open market.
Right.
That's why the Cardinals wanted him. That's why the Titans wanted him. That's why the Steelers wanted him. That's why the Raiders wanted him. That's why 95% of teams wanted him as a final candidate for the job. This idea that they're just going out and hiring some dude that Jon-Eric Sullivan found as like a pet. They're hiring a guy who was a 4-year head coach in college, who was one of Boston College's most successful coaches. They're hiring a guy who led arguably the most successful defense this year, but before his entire defense died of dysentery on the Oregon Trail because they didn't know how to stay healthy. Yeah. Like, I get this idea that, like, well, he blew an 18-point lead against the Chicago Bears in the playoffs. Do we always just judge coaches off of one game? Because if that's the case, then I think Mike McDaniel might be the greatest coach of all time for scoring 70 against the Broncos. I think Brian Daboll might be the greatest head coach of all time for his one game as the head coach of the Giants.
Yeah.
That we judge coaches off of one game, or that we judge coaches based off of like who they worked for. Yeah, man, I get it. You guys, like, I look at the list of candidates. I had issues with every single one of them. Chris Shula, I thought he was too raw. I think he's only coached on McVay, and he hasn't had a lot of experiences. Robert Saleh, I think we all know what happened with the Jets. I don't think I need to tell you what happened with the Jets. Like, Clint Kubiak, he's had one good year as an offensive coordinator, and we're parading him like he's the second coming of baby Jesus out here. Like, I think Clint Kubiak's a great coach. I wouldn't have been mad if he was the head coach, but this idea that, like, Jeff Hafley is only there because he knew Jon-Eric Sullivan, has it ever occurred to someone that maybe he's just a good coach? Because I think he's just a good coach.
And as Green Machine did put down here, they've only worked together for 2 years. And these are two guys that have been in NFL circles for a very long time.
Yeah.
So it's not like that Jon-Eric Sullivan came over and was like, I only know one guy and only see one man in my vision. Like,
when I go to bed, I dream of Jeff Hafley in my mind. Like, no, dude. Like, they interviewed 9 candidates, and they came to the conclusion that their best choice was Jeff Hafley. Do we think they had 8 sham interviews for the sake of it to try and pretend like they were having a search? Because I don't think so. I think they interviewed those guys, and Jeff Hafley continued to be the one that shared a common vision that coached good defenses, that Richard Sherman, a Hall of Fame cornerback, has said multiple times that he's one of the better coaches he's played under. Guys, I think I'm going to listen to Richard Sherman. I think he might know what he's talking about when it comes to football. Regardless, I think Jeff Hafley's a good hire. Is it some home run, grand slam hire that's going to make me the happiest I've ever been? No. I think I have major concerns about who he hires as his offensive coordinator. I think I have major concerns about what happened in the Bears game. Was that a coaching thing? Was that the fact that they didn't have a cornerback on roster who was healthy? Whatever the case may be, I think I have concerns there. I have concerns about whether he's going to be a CEO, whether he's going to call plays, what is his idea of what the future looks like. All those things concern me, but I also think he is just a really good coach. And so this idea that they just hired a guy who, is Jon-Eric Sullivan's buddy, and they were drinking buddies for 10 years. They worked together for 2 years. Jon-Eric Sullivan didn't hire Jeff Hafley. Matt LaFleur hired Jeff Hafley. So I think Jeff Hafley's a good coach. In terms of coordinators, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. It's one hire on defense. I think it's going to be Tem Lakabu, who was his defensive coordinator at Boston College, is highly respected, is one of the more up and coming head coaches or defensive coordinators that people talk about. I don't know if that's the case, whether that is that Jeff Hafley will call plays and it's like, a Kyle Shanahan situation where Shanahan is kind of involved in the offense, but it's like the offensive coordinator, Clay Kubiak, is the one drawing up the game plan and scheming things up. And then Kyle Shanahan going to be a Jeff Hafley is, kind of has his hands all over the defense, and you hire a CEO for offense, whatever the case may be. I don't really know. In terms of offensive coordinators, Jordan, I think there are 3-4 names that we've talked about. First one is Brian Angelico, who is the tight ends coach for the Minnesota Vikings. He's a guy who worked with Jeff Hafley under, I believe it was Greg Schiano in college at Rutgers. It's a name that makes sense. I don't think it's a very inspiring name, truthfully. I think that there are probably better candidates out there if you want to look out of, what I call out of network. It's the guy who hasn't worked with Jeff Hafley, but, maybe comes highly recommended from someone in the same tree. The Callahan, Sean McVay tree. Maybe there's someone there. In terms of guys he's worked with, Brian Fleury's another name, the tight ends passing game coach, passing game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. They actually worked together on defense in Cleveland. Brian Fleury was like a defensive analyst for the Cleveland Browns, while Hafley was, I believe, the linebackers or DBs coach there. I don't remember his exact title. Another name that is certainly a possibility, although, again, hasn't ever called plays. So if that's something you want, I don't think you're getting it out of either of those two guys. And then, because I feel like we have to mention the name just for the sake of it, because it's going to be mentioned every single time anyone ever talks about this job, it's Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks coach Steve Shimko. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think Jeff Hafley's going to go run it back with the same guy who almost got him fired from Boston College. And if he does, we can fire him tomorrow. But I think that I kind of look more towards like out of network hires. Guys like Andrew Janoko, who's involved with Seattle. I think he's their quarterbacks coach. Maybe he's the guy who comes in as offensive coordinator. I also really like their run game coordinator, Justin Outen, who's been, a 10-year assistant who, I don't know, man. I watched that Seattle run game this past weekend. I think I'd want a little bit of that as well. And then obviously, because I think it's important, Bobby Slowick, they worked together very briefly in San Francisco. He's obviously on Dolphins staff. I think that's just a generally uninspiring hire. If you're just going to go hire Bobby Slowick, even though I don't think he's a bad coach. And then just because I think it's going to get mentioned every time, Brian Dable, I think, should get an interview. I don't think he'll get the job. I think he'll end up taking the Philly job, but I think you would be stupid to not give him an interview. And also, can we give Mike McDaniel an interview? Do you think he'll accept an interview to be the offensive coordinator? How does that one work if Jon-Eric Sullivan or Stephen Ross calls him for one more interview?
Well, Brian Dable might be the new head coach in Buffalo. Bobby, I'm going to throw it to you real quick, but I did want to answer this question earlier from Zach Friedman. Yes, if Weaver gets a head coaching job, we will get 2 third-round picks. And I do find something very funny if he gets hired by Baltimore that we get 2 picks from the team that we hired him from.
Yeah.
But Bobby, for offensive coordinator, I know I'm curious to see what names you've heard, but I'm just going to throw one out to you. It's something I've heard for a little bit, and I saw Barry Jackson bring up too. Adam Stenavich is the current offensive coordinator in Green Bay, but he doesn't call plays.
Yep.
So that would be considered a promotion for him if we bring him in.
Real quick, just for context, it would not be considered a promotion anymore. The NFL has changed those rules where if a guy is involved in game planning or has a significant role in the offense, it is no longer considered a promotion, and the Packers would have to grant access, which historically wouldn't happen, though with the way their season ended, maybe they have a different idea of that, and maybe they want to get some new pieces in there.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you think, Bobby?
Yeah, I was going to say that's the first name that stands out to me, mostly because I love his offensive line background. I think he looks like a football dude, but I really don't know much. That's why I've kind of kept an open mind. I really don't know much about Hafley, where he's been. I know he's got connections to most of the coaching trees. So like Kevin kind of hinted at, he could really pull from anywhere at this point. I think a lot of people underestimate that part is like, I think he has a touch of like every little coaching tree there is. So I'm open to see kind of what he does. Like I said, it's very critical to me for a guy that doesn't know anything about where he might go with this. I really want to see where he goes with it. The first name is definitely Adam Stenavich. I made the same correlation you did with the doesn't call plays. So it could be considered a promotion or something to entice him, but also because the guy was an incredible O-line coach as well, which we could welcome here.
Yep. And something else I heard that is a possibility for defensive coordinator, which would be interesting, is he is actually very close to Anthony Campanelli. And there are rumors that Campanelli would be interested in coming back as defensive coordinator if we add the assistant head coach title to him as well. So that's something to watch too. But like I said, I think Lakubu's the guy. Now, just to give everybody an idea, Hafley started his career under someone that's very near to Dolphin fans' hearts, and Dave Wanstead. So for all Wani's issues, he did know how to coach defensive backs. Spent a lot of time under Greg Schiano, then went under.
Will we hire Dave Wanstead to be his defensive coordinator? Do you think that we can get that one done?
I don't think so.
What's like 80-year-old Dave Wanstead doing for
Let's
for
get
Sundays?
an all former Dolphin head coach staff. Joe Philbin,
Jesus Christ.
Adam Gase, bring them all back.
Yep. Sean, what's his name? Sean Dugan, is that the or James
Sean
Dugan?
Duggan, I believe is his
Duggan,
name.
yeah.
Which I think is a very unfortunate name, because I believe if you Google that, you get a completely different Duggan, who is a little bit more problematic than the Packers linebacker coach. That's all I'll say about that. Look up the Duggan family for more information.
Yeah. But yeah, to continue, Hafley came to the NFL under, I believe it was under Mike. No, he was under Schiano first, then he went to Mike Pettin with Cleveland, then followed when Shanahan got hired by San Francisco. He went to San Francisco. Went with Ryan Day to Ohio State, was his defensive coordinator. Went to Boston College. And by Hafley's own admission, he went to Green Bay, in part because Kyle Shanahan had a high regard for Matt LaFleur. So he's been around. He definitely does have an extensive background. If no one saw it, Simon Clancy did have a good article about Hafley's defenses. He had the highest improvement in I don't want to say history, but at least last year in the NFL with DVOA and the improvement that Green Bay made. But yeah, Bobby, so he definitely has the pedigree. Jordan said before you joined us, he doesn't want to say it's a high floor ceiling. What I will change it and say, and I'll reference back to the interview Travis Winfield did with jon-eric Sullivan, which I thought was really good. But this is a culture setting higher, and that's what Green Bay does. It may not work, but first, get to your opinion. What did you think of that interview? What did you take from it? And how much do you think Hafley plays into that?
Yeah, I thought the interview was awesome. Honestly, I think that he's got to do it right, or none of it matters. But as far as like what he said, I think if we all sat in a room and built a GM in a laboratory, I think he would spit out all those things he said. Built through the draft, establish a culture, retain your own. You don't want to bring in people, as I thought this was an awesome way to say it. You don't want mercenaries. You're trying to force things and bend your rules for them because you paid them so much money. I thought it was incredible. I thought, and what did he say? Fast gets slow, but big doesn't get weak, or something like that. I thought that was it.
So it's fast doesn't get slow, or fast gets slow, but big doesn't get small. And I've used that probably 10 times since he said it.
So that was cool. Also love that he did reiterate, like, I'm not saying we want to be slow. We still want speed. Like, we want freaks. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe something to remember when it comes draft time to, if you see those Warry freaking natures out there, DK Metcalfs, maybe put a star next to him. Cause that kind of seems what he's interested in. But, the interview was awesome. I think as far as Jon-Eric Sullivan, he's checked every box. I mean, he obviously was my top candidate, so it's easy for me to say that, but that interview was awesome. It's 19 minutes of just straight ball talk, just everything you'd want to hear. I don't think there was a weak point. Obviously it means nothing if he doesn't translate and, pull it off. But yeah. And also to add to Hafley a little bit, I know that Ohio State had a huge jump too when he went there. They were really struggling, and he made them like the number one defense in football or something. And then they put a bunch of kids in the first round. And then to add on to the what was it you said? You said something else I got to remember now. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so with the Packers. But yeah, I think also I was one of the people, like, all right, I'm out on Hafley after the Chicago game, but you really can't write him off, especially if you consider, like I said, if he's not going to be over the defense, he's going to be a CEO type. It really doesn't matter as much either. And he was shorthanded. He's limited. Obviously, Micah Parsons in a chess piece like that really restricts the way you can call a defense. So I give him the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah. They're missing Edge Cooper. Van Ness was out for 7 games this year. Was it Wyatt Davis was out? They didn't have a healthy secondary at all this year. So they were missing a lot of pieces. But to go back to Sully real quick, I think the thing to me is, I know it wasn't a shot at Chris Greer, but I'm watching this whole thing saying he is definitely sending a message to his boss saying, this is how it's done. And the thing that really stuck to me is he's like, let's be clear. This team building, it's not collaborative. I'm making the decisions. So I think that is also very clear that he came out and Jordan, you can take it from here. I think he just said, look, and this is something in sports too that's becoming clear. The GM, like, and Bobby, you said this when you came on, the GM is the most important piece in the organization. Look around the NFL, look at the teams that are always successful, that are always making the playoffs. They got a strong GM. They do get the quarterback right, but coaches go, players go, GMs keep retooling. Seahawks did it. The Rams did it. Ravens, yes, they missed the playoffs, but they've constantly done it. Steelers have done it too. And I think Omar Khan they haven't been good at drafting recently, but they've been historically pretty good. And they just capitalize on their stupidity of the rest of the NFL when it comes to the draft and just take people who fall. So I think that's important. But what a GM needs to do is they need to set the standard and the vision for an organization and get the coach that fits that vision. Now, I'm not dumb. I would have taken John Harbaugh. I talked myself out of Kevin Stefanski after I did a little bit more of a deep dive on him. And now that I see it's basically going to be Cleveland South.
Yeah, I kind of talked myself out of him once he was like, hey, guys, why don't we just run back what happened in Cleveland? That went really well. Like, hey, okay.
Let's just do it in a location that's not Cleveland.
Yeah, but that really opens it. But yeah, Jordan, what's your thought on that? And what do you think? What changes specifically? Because I do think we're going to be running a very similar system offensively to what Mike did, but there are going to be differences. What do you expect?
I think first and foremost, I don't think the major changes are going to be the schematic changes. I think that the major changes you're going to notice from this team moving forward are the football IQ decisions, are looking like a Super Bowl or playoff contending team. Okay. Not being this kind of small finesse team that goes into freezing temperatures in Kansas City and can't hang. Not a team that, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, falls off towards the end of a season. No, this is going to be a team, and it might take a little bit to get there, but this is going to be a team that is built like a grassroots organization. And I think it's going to come from a place of maturity. And I think that that's something that the Dolphins haven't had in a while, which is why, to me, this doesn't feel like a first-time hire. This to me feels like we are doing what we've asked over the last couple of years and bringing an adult into the room. I think that he is the slightly wiser version of Campanelli. I think he has that same fire and that same passion, but it's more methodical. And I think it's going to come from a more methodical place. It's going to get guys to want to play. And I don't think that you're ever going to see us from an organizational standpoint make the mistake that we made with Andrew Van Ginkel again. I don't think that you'll ever see us make those type of mistakes to where you let a guy go to bring in another guy that immediately backfires. The key to all of this, and the key to whether Jeff Hafley will be the coach of the Miami Dolphins in 5 years, because we've had a number of coaches that have made it exactly 4. The way for Jeff Hafley to make it 5 is to first hire a good offensive coordinator, and B, hire somebody that can put an offensive system in place that can sustain that coach leaving and getting a head coaching job, because you're hiring a defensive coach. So if you have success, your offensive coaches are going to get taken. So you have to be able to put something in place immediately that will last after that offensive coordinator is gone. But I think he's going to get this year to figure that out. I think that we need to be patient with this season. I think that this season is going to be about clearing the books and cleaning things up and building towards 2027 and figuring out if we have a quarterback on the roster. And if not, there are plenty in that draft, and we're going to need to take them.
Bobby, I've seen a lot of your co-hosts don't seem too thrilled with the hire from what I've seen on Twitter. What you get a chance to sit down with them. What do you tell them to make them feel a little better about this hire? Tell them, look, this is the right direction to go.
Yeah, I really don't try to convince them fools anything. I think, like me, it's not about, there's no way of knowing anything right now. So like, I think any reaction is an overreaction, good or bad. So that's where I'm at. Was he my favorite candidate? As I've said, no. And I think talking to them offline, which they're different people, as y'all probably have in y'all's coexistence of duo, but everyone understands like why it was the right fit and the proper marriage to Sullivan. And, they understand each other already day one. You kind of have an idea of players you might want to go after, the type of players you want to go after. And look, end of the day, this is, something I lean on more than them maybe, but they've obviously bought into jon-eric Sullivan. You just got to trust the guy,
Yeah,
they did their due diligence, and they came back to this, and this is where they landed. And it wasn't just him. Apparently Aikman had a big part of this as well. And this is who they were blown away by.
Yep.
Listen, we all have careers and things we do, all 4 of us, outside of just hosting a podcast. So think about, you get a big promotion in your life, something you've been working 20 years for. Okay. You've been working 20 years in an organization to get this big bump, and you finally get it. And they say you have to pick one guy to go into that fire with you. And we all trust jon-eric Sullivan. We all love jon-eric Sullivan. jon-eric Sullivan saw enough from Jeff Hafley in 2 years, in 1/10 of the time that he's been with the Packers. He saw enough out of Jeff Hafley to say, that's the guy I want to run in the fire with. So if we all collectively as a fan base trust jon-eric Sullivan, enough with the bullshit comments, be able to run in the fire with Jeff Hafley. And if we're sitting here 4 years from now and this organization is in a better place than it is right now, that is a win, because this place was left in a mess, and we need dudes to come in that have a vision and are on the same page, because for so long we've watched the Miami Dolphins GM and head coach be on different pages for a long time. So trust that the guy that all of you trust to get us on the right track, trust this coach. And it might not be pretty at first, but it's going to get there. And I trust that Jeff Hafley's going to take us there.
And Jordan, since you mentioned dudes, make sure to watch Dudes Being Dudes on Friday. So
I came so close to saying it. Yeah. I came so close, and I couldn't in the moment formulate the right words, but yeah, check out Guys Being Dudes.
Jordan, I think you said something particular in that, which is that
it always felt like the GM and head coach for the Dolphins were never fully aligned on what the identity was. And I went back and I looked and I was like, could I have ever figured out what the identity was looking at the roster, looking at the construction and build of what the Dolphins were over the last 8 years? Just a very arbitrary number.
Was the last one.
Could you have told me what the identity was under Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer? Because I couldn't. I sat there and I tried to figure out what is their idea. What is their idea on how to be a sustainable football team for an entire season and not just for one game? Because they always had one game moments. They never had 17 game consistencies. I felt very similar about Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores' tenure is maybe a little bit different because of some of the offensive coordinator problems and some of the issues with a certain quarterback and a quarterback they tried to flirt with in the trade market. That's all I'll say about the guy. But like, I never felt confident that there was a shared vision between him and Chris Greer where it was like, here are the guys we need to acquire. Here's how we're going to build this. Here's what we're going to look like on Sundays. It never felt like it was like, here's what we're going to look like on Sundays, because I think that's the biggest thing when you look at good teams. When you look at teams that win championships, they always have a shared vision. It's not just because they have the best quarterback in football or because they have the best offensive line. It's because head coach, general manager, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, they can all sit down and they can go, hey, we need these kind of guys. We need this kind of here's how we play every Sunday. Here's what we need to build a team that plays like that on Sunday.
But you know, the most important part is, Kevin, and I'm going to throw it right back to you. It's not just knowing how you're going to look on Sundays. It's also knowing how you're going to look Monday through Saturday.
Yeah, it's the idea that, like, how do you plan to look like that on Sunday as well? Because the Dolphins, they wanted to play a certain way on Sundays, but it never felt like they planned to play like that Monday through Saturday. And I think that's why they were so underprepared come Sunday. And I think that's why some of their biggest issues coincidentally came against some of the best coaches in football and not when they played bad football teams like the Jets or bad football teams like the Patriots before this year. Anyone can beat the New York Jets on Sunday because you're more talented. Can you go beat a Mike Vrabel, Drake May led football team on a Sunday? Can you go beat Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh? Can you go beat Nick Sirianni? Can you go beat John Harbaugh consistently with Lamar Jackson?
How can you watch, as a Dolphin fan, how can you watch the games this weekend? All of which, other than Seattle, which was cold as shit, all three other games were played in snow. Okay? Yeah. How do you watch that and say, like, in order to win in the NFL, you have to be able to win in that type of temperature? That's where the championship is won in those months. Look at the Patriot teams that skated through and would just in December start pulling out a LeGarrette Blount that can run through you, because like a Giants that have Brandon Jacobs that can run through you. Like, who had the genius idea, like, when it gets freezing cold, let's give the ball to a 235-pound running back? Like, yep. Mike McDaniel's teams were never built to be able to do anything, in my mind, that has success in December.
I think the bigger part of that is not that they couldn't win in the cold weather. It's that I never felt that the Dolphins could win ugly. I never felt like there was a game under him or even under Brian Flores, truthfully, where did any of us feel confident if we knew the game was going to be low scoring and the Dolphins were going to have to create turnovers and be a physical team and just get out of there? Because there are always football games, and I think we saw it with the Rams. I think we saw it with the Rams against the Bears. Sometimes you just got to get out of there. Sometimes you just got to get out of there and thank the lucky stars that you didn't lose. Because, I think the Dolphins were too focused on being pretty. They were too focused on what the perfect ideal situation looks like, instead of what does it look like and what is our plan when we get to a game where we get punched in the mouth 8 times and we need to get up a 9th time. Because the Dolphins were involved in a lot of those games where it came down to the final drive and they weren't ready for it. Yeah. And I think the biggest example of that is the Chargers game from this year, where you go down, you get this great drive from Tua, you take the lead, and we all sat there and went, I don't feel confident that they're going to come out of here with a win. I think we all sat there and said they're going to find a way to lose this game because they always find a way to lose this game. You always find a way to lose a game like that because you're not ready to win a game like that.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's not about whether you're playing in cold weather or whether you get home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs. You got to be ready to win ugly. You got to be ready to win a game 10-7 as much as you are ready to win a shootout 45-44, because football, like especially in the NFL, is a game of parity. And I look at like the college football national championship that's going to happen in about an hour and a half. Both of those teams are capable of winning ugly. Both those teams are able. Are
not going to start till 9 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, I said an hour and a half, more like 6 hours from now by the time they finally get started. But like, Jordan, going back to another point you said about, well, you have to be ready if you lose an offensive coordinator. I think there was something that Sean Payton said when he was asked about potentially losing Davis Webb, potentially losing Vance Joseph, potentially losing a couple of coaches on his staff. And he said that it's a privilege. To be able to lose your staff is a privilege in the NFL because that means you're successful and that means that you're winning. And so like this idea that like you're going to keep a staff is, I think, the biggest misconception in football.
And that's why the GM is the most important piece.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you hire an offensive coach, a defensive coach, a special teams coordinator, a CEO, whatever the case may be, you're always bound to lose a coordinator. If you're a good football team, you're going to lose your defensive coordinator. If you have an offensive coach, you're going to lose your offensive coordinator. You're going to lose both of them. The biggest thing about it is that it should be a privilege. If the Dolphins are in a position where other teams want to hire our offensive coordinator and our defensive coordinator for head coaching positions, that means we're making deep playoff runs. That means we're consistently one of the best teams in the AFC and in the NFL. And truthfully, I don't know if I'm like alone in this. I think I'll take that. Controversial hot take here. I think I'll take the Dolphins being a good football team. And so if they're losing, I know I'm really here saying the most controversial takes ever, but like, I think the biggest part of it is like, dude, if they lose an offensive coordinator, that should be celebrated. That shouldn't be a thing where you like sit down and you get nervous about losing one. It should be, oh my God, people want a part of what we're building. Yeah. Like, I don't think Bill Belichick ever got mad that he lost a defensive coordinator or that he lost a coach. I think it was a sign that they were doing the right things the right way.
Yeah. Bobby, since we talked about it a little bit, is this where we're heading in next year? And if so, what are your expectations?
This is a funny one because it's going to be, I think it won't take long to figure it out. They might even want to come out and either nip it in the bud quickly and move on, or even say, you know, hey, we're going to try to roll with Tua this year at least due to the tie up in money. I know like Ghost is dead set on we got to keep Tua because he just gets paid so much and there's no way out of that. To me, we know how these situations go. You can't let the 52 million guy sit in the locker room every day, sit in those meetings every day, be a headache, be a problem. Now, if you're going to try, if Hafley's going to come in this building and say, hey, I'm going to try one more time with Tua, then that's another thing. But to me, you got to cut Tua, whether it's early or after June 1st. I feel like you just got to move on from Tua and you got to, reset. And Jordan kind of spoke on this. I don't expect this to be fixed overnight because I don't think people realize how much turnover we're about to have this whole season.
Yeah.
Without the new GM and head coach in place, we got 30 UFAs. We got no money. We're actually negative in the cap. Not many ways to come up with. We got a little bit of way to come up with some, but even then, yes, more getting rid of people. So I really think this offseason just needs to be just
clean
blow
slate.
it up, take your losses, eat your dead cap, start getting ahead of that. Because the longer you wait, the more years down the road it's going to take to get out of that. So, like, I feel like I'd cut Tua, I'd cut Chubb, I'd move on from some other people. I know Minka
Jason
wants
Sanders
to come back.
Gone.
Yeah, I think Minka wants to come back and be that kind of veteran mentorship, but that's a conversation now with how things ended and how things were blown up. I don't know if it makes sense for us or him, honestly. That's not just our decision. If I'm him, I'm not so sure I'm signing up for that. I know he wants to be home, though. He wants to be home. Got a lot going on with the family and stuff like that.
I kind of think because Minka clears up a decent chunk of cash too. So I kind of think you just take that. And then if we do that, hey, the Caleb Downs agenda is back on the menu. So
come on.
Yeah, I don't, Bobby. I've said this all the time. I do not think there's a better player in college football than Caleb Downs. So if we could get him on this team,
Brett, I have a quick question. Why does it have to be Caleb Downs or Minkah Fitzpatrick? Why can't it be both? Because
it could be both.
I look at
reason. Salary cap. Now, in fairness, this is really a 1-year thing. That our salary cap is
truthfully, I think the salary cap stuff, while it's bad, is the pretty easy fix is letting Tua swallow his pride and just eating the 1 year of $55 million. And whether it's Quinn Ewers or it's Malik Willis or it's Jarrett Stidham after he throws for 5 touchdowns and beat the Patriots, God willing. Brett, I just wanted to throw a dig at the New England Patriots. It may be the only dig I get about one of the best teams in football this year. But
I do want to nip this in the butt. We're not getting Malik Willis. Especially if he's getting the money people are talking about, which is $45 million. That ain't happening.
If he gets $45 million from an NFL team, that GM should be fired tomorrow. And I don't care if it's jon-eric Sullivan or it's someone else. That is some of the worst business you can make. But like, the truth is, I think that when you look at what Jeff Hafley did so well in Green Bay, it's when he had 2 safeties who were versatile, who were consistent pieces. This year in Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams, a more younger piece. I think that there is very much a real possibility that the idea for the Dolphins is to build with a guy like Minkah because he's still young. He just played a really good year. I think the Minkah of the Brian Flores days is no longer who Minkah Fitzpatrick is at this point. I think that there is like really a situation for me where that may be the best case forward. I will say this about the proposed rebuild. I don't think it has to be a teardown because I think the common thing is that it's going to be, we'll tear it down and we'll figure it out later kind of thing. First of all, tanking doesn't work in the NFL. It has never worked in the NFL. The best teams don't tank. And so I think this idea that like jon-eric Sullivan is going to come in here, again, a guy who learned from the Green Bay Packers who have never tanked once in their life and have only just continued to build through the draft and build and trust their scouting and trust their development. I think this idea that like suddenly the Dolphins are going to be the team that just throws 500, trades everyone away, we go through another rebuild. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more likely that they just kind of have a bad year because they're not ready to compete. But I also think this roster has plenty of talent that can be a part of a core. And so this idea that like you should trade Achane, you should trade Jordan Brooks, you should trade Aaron Brewer, right? Like, because I've seen enough of that for this to be a thing that like people I think have an opinion of. Why? Why should you trade good players to try and acquire good players at that position? That to me has never made sense. Like a guy like Bradley Chubb, fine. If it's like Bradley Chubb is eating a big chunk of your cap and you want to get younger there, you want to draft a guy, you want to build around Chop and, a draft pick, sure. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think Bradley Chubb was really good this year, and so I also wouldn't be against him coming back for another year. But like, there's been people who are like, they should trade Jordan Brooks and they should trade Aaron Brewer, they should trade Devon Achane for picks, and we should draft a quarterback. Okay, now who's the quarterback going to throw to? Who's the quarterback going to trust on the offense? Have you thought about what the plan is once you get the quarterback? Or is it just to get the quarterback and hope to God that everything else falls into place? Because I think that's a terrible way to build a football team.
Yeah. And Bobby Jordan, I'll let you guys go about this too. I do think, like, does our roster have holes? Absolutely. I do think there is definitely talent on the roster. And I honestly don't. If you look at what our roster was, they were not good at the basics. So I think there are good coaches from McDaniel's staff. John Embry, good coach. Studsville, good coach. Our cornerback coach, Mathia Arroyo, just got an interview for a defensive coordinator position. We gave him chicken shit. He made chicken salad.
Absolutely.
Austin Clark. Yeah, Austin Clark, I would do everything to keep because I think he's just traditionally been good. But Bobby, I'll let you start. Like, I liked Mike. I liked his creativity, but this was not a good coach team.
No, and I do think, like, I don't think it's going to be a situation where they necessarily tank. I just think naturally, kind of like what Kevin said, you're going to lose half your roster. It's going to be some new faces. I do think the core of this team is probably better, and especially the young core, than people realize. I do think the draft, especially towards the end of the year, that class last year really came on strong. A lot of guys were on the field. I do think, Jonah's an issue, but geez, Jonah was a miss, huh? I think we all, I don't know about y'all, but we love Jonah.
We love Jonah. We loved him. What I will say is his bad was really bad. There were moments that you're like, okay, there's something there, but he's not something I would say, yeah, pencil him in as a starter. Honestly, what I would do right now is say, Jonah, you're competing with Cole Strange at one guard. James Daniels, if you're healthy, you're the other guard, and you make him compete.
I just think I think that like I went back and I watched probably the last like 3 or 4 games. I think Jonah was actually not that bad. And I think if the last 3 or 4 games is more of an indication of who Jonah Sabanaya is next year, and I butchered that last name, so we're just going to stick to Jonah for the rest of this episode. It's been a year and I still have not figured out how to pronounce his last name.
Oh, you got it right.
I didn't. I think there's like another Aya in there somewhere or something. But like I think that when you look at what the end of the year was like for Jonah, he began to take a step forward. And I'm not going to sit here and say
until last week. He was pretty bad against the Patriots.
Okay, everyone was bad that last week. I'm willing to.
Also true.
I'm willing to count that game as nothing more than they played a football game on a Sunday because they had to play a football game on a Sunday. But like truthfully, I think I went back and I watched it. It was better. Not going to sit here and say it was starting quality. It was like what we expect from the guy you spent a second round pick on, you traded up for. But like, I don't know if I'm willing to sit here and be like, it's time to just blow it up. He couldn't start next year, right? Because the truth is, when you're moving from tackle to guard and you're moving from the right side to the left side, it's going to be an adjustment period. I think everyone has said, like, I think the common adage when you ask offensive linemen is it's like wiping your ass with your other hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's completely just a thing you're not used to. It's not that you can't do it. It's just a thing you're not used to. And so I think that like the biggest thing is that what does it look like when training camp starts? What does it look like when he has a year of NFL experience? He took his lumps. You know what? He got his butt kicked more than he won. What does it look like now? Because is it now that he has turned the corner and that year 2 is really when you start to see those guys take that next step? I think that like truthfully, when I look at the roster and some of the holes they have, replacing Jonah is like near the bottom of my list of things that I'm going to hit the panic button on in year 1, especially if like we all know that the year's going to be bad. Then I don't know why, like, hey man, let's just have him take another bad year of lumps. And like by midseason, again, if it's a thing of just disaster football like it was this year and it's a year and a half of it, then we can just blow it up and say it's not going to work. You know what? It's time to figure out whether we can move him to tackle or move him to right guard, whatever the case may be. But like, I don't know why James Daniels would be on the roster next year. I don't know what the cap implications look like. I'm just done of that experience, and I'm willing to get rid of him and just say it didn't work because he had 3 plays, didn't return. I'm not trusting him to be anything more than a body on a 53-man roster.
Looks like we got about 4.8 million dead cap to cut James Daniels. It looks like there's an out. We wouldn't save a ton, but it would void next year, which next year
Now,
there's a decent amount of money on there.
I will say this back to the coaching thing. All the stuff our offensive linemen have, I think our offensive line, our scheme under McDaniel, they had to do more than I think any other offensive line in football. I try watching Eric Smith's videos when he breaks them down, and I was always told offensive line, it's block the guy in front of you, pull, do whatever. They're like having a chip, go up, read. They're almost doing quarterback work there. So maybe
they have like landmarks and stuff 15 yards from them every play. It's like if you're not outside the numbers 17 yards down the field in 0.3 seconds, the whole play's blown up. It's like
yep. It was Chicago, Mr. S, that drafted James Daniels. But now, as we build the staff, like we talked a little bit about,
Chicago.
Yeah, it was Chicago. So just throw back. Now that we know who our head coach is going to be, I think I've decided, looking at Green Bay's history, I know we're not going wide receiver round 1, but we probably will get a couple.
That would be the funniest thing ever, though.
Yeah, it would be. But God, Carnell Tate would look good as a Dolphin, wouldn't he?
God, he would.
I think if jon-eric Sullivan drafted a wide receiver in the first round, Aaron Rodgers would be so pissed, even if he's retired, that the team finally did it for 2 years, like effectively 2 years in a row, if you consider what the Packers did last year.
They took one last year, Mr. S, but traditionally the Packers
they don't draft wide receivers until like the 4th round. I wouldn't start putting money on Carnell Tate being a Dolphin.
Bobby, we'll start with you, and then I'll go to Jordan. I'm thinking right now, I'm not a big fan of Falk from Auburn. I do kind of like David Bailey. I think we're going to go edge, and I think we're at the point, and I love the chop pick. He's at the point where he didn't show enough, and you can't bank on him getting around.
And he's not an excellent fit for Hafley's defense.
So what do you think we're going to do early, Bobby? And then Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think actually, if you talk about who you could possibly entertain a trade on, if the price is right, Chop's got to be there.
Yes.
Especially when you think about fit, and we've 2 full years of them. I will say, you said you don't really like them, but man, this isn't my choice. But I'm starting to grow on it because I'm starting to already think like a Packer. If you said who is the Green Bay Packers pick at number 11, it's Falk.
Yeah,
it really is.
Thinking,
it's the 5 tech who can set an edge, who's a freak of freaking nature, and it just screams Packers to me. But we'll see. I think they'll have enough ways to go, especially with the first. Is the first year they're all here. There's gonna be a lot of turnover, and then it'll be interesting to see too, if Sullivan wants to go get his guy, or people always want to make that first impression. It's always interesting to me to watch the first draft from a GM. So I am very curious to see how they do it. But I'd say edge does sound right. Obviously in a dream world, I think somehow Caleb Downs falls to 11. I'm running the card up. That's just, Minka or no Minka, I do not care. Caleb Downs is, to me, a 10-year starter in this league, and you run that card
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah. Jordan and I'll let Jordan talk about too. What do you think of Sonny Styles? He might not be there though either.
I think he's an excellent fit. I think that's a guy that almost you're going to see him do a little more in the NFL than you saw him do in college. I think first and foremost, he's an excellent pairing inside with Jordan Brooks. I think the other thing I love about Sonny Styles is that he was actually recruited to Ohio State as a defensive back. And he was a very oversized defensive back that they moved to linebacker. And I think that when you put him in the middle of your defense with Jordan Brooks, it's also Jordan Brooks is going to get a big contract in the next couple of years. So that's something you got to plan ahead for. But when I run mock drafts, really at that point, Jermod McCoy, who Mr. S is very high on, he's higher on him than me. I'm a little more of a Mansour Delane guy.
Real quick, he did not, Mr. S, he did not recruit Downs, who came from Bama, but Igbinosin, I believe that's his name, he did recruit. I would not touch him in round 2, like I've said.
Oh, please, God, no. Nobody with the name Igby in their name. Yeah. Please. I fucking can't, man. I just can't. But Sonny Styles, I think, when you look at him right now, I know Mr. S really wants Jermod McCoy. I don't see cornerback as a dire need. I don't see it. I think it's a big need. I don't think it's the top need. And I'm also a best player available type guy. I think that's Sonny Styles. I don't think that we have enough of a need for it to be a guy like Peter Woods, because I don't see us doubling down on defensive tackle. Although he's
Kenyon Sadiq.
Brett, I told you at the beginning of the cycle, I'm not talking about a tight end. I'm not doing it. Until they draft one, I'll be pleasantly surprised. But for years straight, we've gotten hyped up for the tight end. Bobby.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Breaking news.
Oh, boy.
Jeff Hafley gets 5 years.
Okay.
Ross tends to give bigger.
I think it's you give him 5 years and then you just eat the buyout of it.
It doesn't really matter. I just thought I was interested to see how bought in they really. Obviously it doesn't matter. You can cut a guy anytime as a head coach, but I was interested to see how everything lined up there.
Yep.
I do think that going 5 years is what gets him to not get on the flight to Nashville. And go.
Yeah, I bet it was honestly more of hey, what's it gonna take for you to not take any more visits? And effectively, we end it here. You sign the contract tonight. We get going tomorrow. Because I think the biggest concern, and this is what I talked about in the Discord, I think a little bit, is if you let him get on that flight to Nashville, or you let him get on that flight to Pittsburgh, or wherever he goes after Nashville, all it takes is one good presentation and one good interview for him to no longer be your top guy. And so if it takes 5 years for him to end it now, end it now. I think that's fine. Does anyone know how many years Sullivan got? I wonder if they're on the same timeline.
I think it's 5.
5.
Okay, so same timeline. I think that's the right way to do it.
But the other name, I do think Keldrick Falk is the other name. I think him and Sonny Styles right away are the two best fits. Recently, they haven't done it. I did a little research on this the other night. Recently, they haven't done it, but Green Bay a little bit. They have spurts where they move up a little bit to go get a guy that they want. So I wouldn't be surprised if we really like Fano or Maui-Goa and they're gone and we don't think they're getting past 8 or 9. I think we're going to have enough assets over the next couple of years. I think if we see a clear jump in tier from one to the next, I do think there's a chance we move up a couple spots and go get a guy.
To play devil's advocate here, I think I'm all about getting your guy and getting the best player. But every time speaking of mock drafts, every time I get to 11, I feel like the best option is trading down. It's just like,
it is.
I see 6 players I like and all the ones I love probably gone. And then if I have to separate the next 5, I'm good at 15 or 18. I mean, it's not much drop off there.
I agree. There you're in a spot where you might take like CJ Allen, the other off-ball linebacker. You might take Mansour Delane. There. I think that's when Kenyon Sadiq is really in there. So there are a number of guys. I'm not going to try to say his name, but the guard from Penn State, I think is somebody that if we move down, is somebody that you could possibly see there. But I look at the defensive side of the ball, and I think we're going to add an impact player that side of the ball right away.
Yep.
I think
I
think the biggest thing is that to answer the question from Green Machine, it's like there's no quarterback this year outside of Fernando Mendoza, who's going to go number 1 overall. That is like a surefire top 10 pick. That
and
if
Ty
he starts
Simpson is not a Green Bay.
Yeah,
guy.
it's like the only so I think typically, right, like teams trade up for certain positions as opposed to like this idea that teams will just trade up because you want them to trade up, right? They typically trade up if there's an offensive tackle. They trade up if there's an edge rusher who's dynamic and thinks that there's someone that you can like build your defense around, or you trade up for a quarterback, obviously, because you need to trade up for a quarterback. Unless a team falls in love with Ty Simpson during the pre-draft process, which I would question whether they should be an NFL general manager and an evaluator if they are falling in love with Ty Simpson, who I think is a very talented quarterback, but has a lot of inconsistencies. I wouldn't even be upset if the Dolphins picked him really late in the first round. If it was like pick 29, 30, and they do kind of the Jordan Love situation, I wouldn't be upset with that. But I think in general, it's like, what is the idea there? There's a name that's not been mentioned when you guys talked, and I think maybe it's because we think he might go earlier. I also don't trust NFL teams because NFL teams are always going to pick just based off of height, weight, speed, length. Ruben Bain, if he falls to 11, I would be running up the pick, and I would be thanking God and Jesus Christ that he fell to 11 because
I don't think he gets out of 3.
I think that when you look at what we've seen out of Jeff Hafley and what we've looked and seen from what jon-eric Sullivan said in the interview with Travis Wingfield, it was a lot of like, hey, we're going to be physical. We're going to do this, that, the other. We're going to try and win in the trenches. We're going to try and win in the margins. I think there are 2 guys playing tonight that would make a ton of sense. And I think one of them might be there in Maui-Goa just because I think teams will view him as a guard rather than a tackle. If he's there, I think he's the no-brainer pick because I think he fits what you want to be as a powered team who wins in the trenches, wins physically. I would be shocked if the first pick is not defense, though. I would just be generally shocked if the first pick is not someone on the defensive side of the ball. I think the luxury is that there isn't really a defensive position where I'm like, you can't pick a guy here because you have 3 guys who are already ready. Outside of like maybe defensive tackle, and there's not even a defensive tackle in the first round who's like that good. So I don't really think that's like a thing. But like, truthfully, right, if they pick a linebacker, I think it's a guy who can start day 1 next to Jordan Brooks. If they pick an edge rusher, I think it's a guy who could start day 1 next to Chop Robinson. If they pick a cornerback, he might be the best cornerback on the roster, period, because, well, Rasul Douglas is a free agent, Jack Jones is Jack Jones, and Storm Duck is Storm Duck. If it's a safety, he can't be any worse than Ashton Davis. Just quite frankly, I don't think he can be any worse than Ashton Davis. So I think in general, the way to go is pick defense, unless there's some guy falling. If there's like a fall on like an offensive tackle or something, I would run the pick to the table and go, you know what, man, we got really lucky today, but everyone else's mistake is our luxury per se. I think that would be something that would intrigue me. Is like if an offensive tackle falls just because it's one of those drafts where I don't know if there's a lot of answers past like 5 or 6. I think the Dolphins could be in a position where, again, we talk about trading up maybe, and you have a couple thirds, you have got a couple mid-round picks. Maybe this is one of those drafts where you use one of those mid-round picks to take a guy who is, again, one of those building blocks that Sullivan talked about.
I
Guys,
thought it was interesting. Go ahead.
I have to read one tweet, Bobby, and then I'll throw it to you.
All good.
From friend of all of our shows, Mr. Frank Fleming. And I quote, "Welp, Dolphins fucked. Head coach hired Jeff Hafley will fucking suck." That is.
I think he's just
Frank.
That's
Fleming.
the old battered dolphin syndrome talking in him, but we'll see. Bobby, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, let's be honest too. Like, what is Frank going to be happy about?
Yeah,
We could have marched Don Shula, dug him up, and brought him out there. He'd be like, "What the fuck is this?
yeah.
Where's his
That
damn
old school
glasses?"
football won't work anymore.
Yeah. What is this?
Dude,
Yeah,
they could have paraded out prime Bill Belichick and freaking Frank Fleming. Love him to death, by the way. I think he's one of the funniest guys
Oh, hell yeah.
on
Yeah.
sports, like whatever we call it, media per se. He wouldn't be happy if we like created the perfect coach in a laboratory and brought him out there. He'd find a reason to not like him because he's like got a haircut that he doesn't like. I love him to death, but
Which people
I
were
think his
complaining about
opinion's not very
Hafley's haircut.
valid.
People were complaining about Hafley's
I
haircut.
think
on
people
his
are taking it a little too serious. Like, people firing back about people not liking his haircut is a little too much for me.
All right,
Like,
can we admit one thing?
He does look like
he needs a haircut.
yeah.
He needs.
I will say that the one thing I did not like that I'm like, guys, really, is when people are comparing him to Joe Philbin. And
yeah,
I'm like,
that was lazy.
That's lazy.
I
Joe
think that would have been the
Philbin
case though if you like hire Clay Kubiak. Everyone would be like, "Oh, he's just Mike McDaniel. You just hired another Mike." I think it's just like lazy, like effectively like helmet scouting. Like when you
Well,
go,
they
I can't
literally
pick
have no correlation but Green Bay. Like, they're two different archetypes. They come from a different side of the football. Philbin's
They
like
never shared a
50
staff. It's not like they
with
shared
no
a staff.
personality. Yeah, 50's like Philbin was like 50, no personality. Hafley's a little younger and like a little, he has a little sergeant to him. So like, yeah, that was the laziest shit I ever seen. I'm glad you brought that up because that shit pissed me off too. What I was about to say though, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, that one was just like so like, really, guys.
When Kevin was speaking about taking a tackle if one might have fell in your lap, I thought it was interesting too. One, Sullivan didn't mention Tua as a building block at all. He didn't mention Tua at all. Also, though, he said, "I love Brewer. I love Patrick Paul. Other than that, I'm very excited to build the rest of that offensive line." And I said, "Holy shit, Austin Jackson, pack your bag."
We do have an out on Austin Jackson. I kind of think because, let's say, we talk about Tua's injuries. Austin Jackson's missed a lot of time in his career. You can't rely on that anymore. And he said,
I do love Austin Jackson, though.
Yeah, no, I love him as a player, but he's just not reliable. And I think he saves us money if we cut him too.
It saves us about $2 million, but this will be the last year he's on our roster.
Yeah. We've been going an hour. Bobby, I know it's about time for you to pour some bourbon, get ready for this game. So,
Before we get off,
I was going to ask you what your thoughts of the game were tonight. Do the Canes continue their run, or does Indiana pull off the biggest?
I'll go last on this one.
I'll say this, and I'll keep it pretty simple. I think people are overlooking Miami a little because they definitely had a harder path. Like, Miami has kept proving everyone wrong, and they've played the top level talent. But Indiana is an absolute buzzsaw. Like, they're the only team. I tell this to the guys. It's incredible. They have the consensus number 1 overall quarterback on their team, and they don't even have to throw the fucking ball. They can literally show up, run the ball down your throat, and suffocate you on defense. It's like, oh yeah, how about this guy? Let's let him throw 15 times. He'll operate well. Like, they don't even need the number 1 overall pick to win a national championship, but they have the number 1 overall pick. And let's be honest here, Kurt Signetti, come on, boys.
Yeah,
he's awesome,
dude. I say this all the time. When I was in college, I went to Lock Haven in middle of bumblefuck up in Pennsylvania. Kirk Signetti was the coach of IUP, the first college game I went to. They beat us 75-3.
That guy's awesome, dude.
Bobby, what was your score prediction?
Oh, score. I think I have it something like 31-21 Indiana. I think that if Miami can get a turnover, which I don't see the path for that, but if like Ohio State, it would take a similar play. They'd have to get a pick six early, like a good opening drive for a touchdown, and somehow get a pick six. That's the only way I see Miami still in it. They got to come up with some crazy defensive score. Other than that, I think it'll be tough. I think it'll be physical, a lot of running the football tonight, but Indiana's a final machine, 31-21 Indiana.
Yeah, I had it really close to that. Shout out to my younger brother who is an IU graduate. I think we looked it up. I went up to the Rose Bowl with him. I think when he was in college, the most games they won in a season was 5. I think they went it was 4-5, 3-5 or something like that over his 4 years. So I've watched a decent amount of Indiana football over the last decade, and I'm really happy for that program. That is unbelievable, and not one of the true blue bloods coming in and getting to this point. I think at the same time, those of us all kind of covering the Dolphins, by extent, you kind of get a lot of hurricane talk there too. So I think for me personally, it's a very interesting game to sit back and watch because these are two teams that I've watched a lot, not only this season, but over the last decade, and coaching high school football in South Florida. There are some kids on that Canes team that I've literally seen grow up. But I think that Indiana is too well coached. I think that they have it all. They're going to play physical defense, but they're also, people don't realize, and Brett, I said this to you when we talked about the very first round games. I said, and we talked about the Big Ten championship, people don't realize how well Indiana can run the ball and how well the center, those guards pull. They have two really, really physical running backs in Hemby and Black. And I think it's just going to be a little too much for Miami to handle. But I do think it's a high-scoring game. I think Indiana wins 38-24.
Yeah. I'm going to say Indiana wins 31-28. Miami surprised me. I was kind of shocked they beat A&M. Jordan and I did prediction for the Ohio State game. I did say for it to be close, Miami has to get pressure on Sayin. I didn't think they could because the only team that could get pressure on Sayin was Indiana. Well, Miami did it. So you'd like to think that, but like I said, Indiana, people forget the center for Indiana, Pat Coogan, was the MVP of the game against Bama. Dolphin fans are going to become very familiar with Elijah Surratt. I guarantee Mr. S wants him every second round.
Yes.
Surratt is going to be everybody's favorite.
He's getting to the point where he might not be there in our second round pick.
Hey, talk about Packers style receivers. That's a perfect pick.
Yeah, Surratt's going to be a guy everybody loves. Here's the thing, and I know it's changed this year, but Jordan and I joke about it all the time. I started calling it cristobaling. Mario Cristobal teams always have something where they just do something stupid, and it hasn't happened this year. But you know it's going to happen at some point, and Cignetti's just that much better of a coach. He's a unicorn, 101. I've said this to my friends, Jordan, you and I think I said it off air. This is probably the greatest coaching job ever in college football, especially when you consider they're built off of mostly JMU transfers that are all, there's about 5 or 6 guys who started at James Madison that are going to be in the NFL next year. And I want 3 or 4 of them on this team. I think it'll be interesting. I think Miami will keep it interesting because they got a fun defense, but yeah, Mendoza just doesn't make mistakes. And he's just going to make he's just going to make the right throw. So I think Indiana finishes this amazing story that no one who watches college football thought would ever happen.
Hey, that's great. All I'll say about this is I don't care if it's the 85 Bears. I don't care if it's 2019 LSU. I don't care if it's 2001 Miami. I don't care if it's the God Squad of the best college football players of all time. The only guy I want leading me through the tunnel is Mario Damn Cristobal, and I got Canes by 1 million.
Canes by 1 million.
Canes by 1 million.
Are you pretending to be Danny Boy Kane right now?
Canes by 1 million. Danny Boy Kane is cooking when he says Canes by 1 million because Canes by 1 million.
A couple
Okay, what's
questions.
your real prediction? What's your real prediction?
For y'all boys, real quick.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead. What's your prediction?
Oh, I just said Canes by millions. Bobby
Okay,
Campbell.
I didn't know what you're going with that. Okay.
All right.
$1 million to 0.
2 questions. One, is 11 too rich for your blood in Jordan Tyson with his injury history? If it wasn't for injuries, I'd love Jordan Tyson at 11.
I would love him at 11. I think he's a great receiver. But like I said earlier, I just think knowing how the Packers have drafted, I can't see us taking receiver that early. And what about you?
I think it's a little too early for me. I actually think when we get to draft day, I think he's going to end up being the 3rd receiver off the board. I think it'll be Tate, and then I think it'll be Mekhi Lemon, who I currently don't think is a great fit for us right now, especially with Waddle. But I love that. I know we're going to talk a lot of draft between now and April, but I love the crop of 2nd-round receivers and the way they fit our offense. So I think
that's where I was going next. So we already said Surratt, another guy I love in the 2nd. How do we feel about Chris Bell or Chris Brazil?
So Chris Bell, it's going to depend on his injury. I like Chris Bell so much that I would take him even if I knew he was going to be out next year.
We're thinking like AJ Brown clone, right?
He runs like an absolute bowling ball. Like he is big. Like he is every piece of 6'2", 215, 220. Like
right.
I want that guy on the outside. Brazil to me is a slightly more raw Brian Thomas. And Brian Thomas was also a little raw, but the tools are there. I think that Chris Bell is the type of guy that I could definitely see us taking in either the 2nd or the 3rd round.
With Brazil, it's hard not to be excited about a dude 6'5" that runs like that. It's like, we'll figure it out later. Like that's Christian Watson vibes. It's just like, we'll figure that out.
I could see it.
What do you think, Kev?
I take Jordan Tyson in the 1st round. I think Jordan Tyson is an incredibly talented receiver.
Absolutely.
I just think my general issue with taking a receiver 1st round is that your biggest need? Because I still think you need to draft to some degree based off your biggest need.
I think it's a bigger need than people realize.
I think it's a need. I think it's a need. I think the need is dependent on what you think is the future of Jalen Waddle on this team. Because everyone's just kind of going, I think, defaulting to, well, he'll be traded. I don't know for sure. I have opinions on either side of this. I think I said earlier, right? Like you don't trade good players. I think there may be a time where you trade a good player. I would say I kind of look more towards like Skylar Bell, I think it's Skylar Bell, the UConn receiver. Yeah. He's one of my favorite receivers in this draft. He's one of I think one of the better receivers in this draft. He put up insane numbers at UConn. Skylar Bell. He's incredible. And I think he's going to surprise a lot of people at the Shrine Bowl this year who probably don't know about him as much as maybe they should because he plays for UConn. And truthfully, people are probably not watching UConn football, except unless you're me, because I am watching UConn football.
3rd in the country in receptions, 2nd in the country in yards, 3rd in the country in touchdowns.
And don't forget UConn.
At UConn.
At UConn. The other guy is, I think that like if I'm taking a receiver though in the 1st round, it's Carnell Tate. I think if you're taking a receiver in the 1st round, it should be Carnell Tate. After that, I just have concerns about Denzel Boston. I have concerns about Jalen Tyson. I think that they're not perfect players, though I really think Denzel Boston in year 2 or year 3 is one of the better receivers in football. I just think he needs some seasoning and a receiver coach who's actually ready. But man, I watch Carnell Tate play football, and I think that guy's like a day 1 starter. I think he's a guy who, again, we talk a lot about like the wide receiver 2 at Ohio State might as well be the wide receiver 1 because of how good they've been in the NFL. I think he's another example of like, man, he's probably the wide receiver 2 just because Jeremiah Smith is a freak in nature, but he is also just truthfully.
They got another freak coming next year too, in Chris Henry Jr.
I don't get it. I don't get it. What Brian Hartline had to deal with the devil.
He's gone now, so you don't have to worry about that anymore.
I think he had to deal with the devil to get every good wide receiver because the fact that Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in football and we all just go, oh, yeah, that's cool. Have you watched Carnell Tate play yet? I think he might be better. And everyone's like, oh, okay. Like, I think it's just so crazy. It's kind of a weird receiver class for me, though. And so I wouldn't be shocked if the Dolphins don't pick one until later and they just kind of try and go for for prototype instead of like talent or production, because I think this is the kind of draft where you do that. There are some guys I like, but there are also just some guys where I'm like, I don't know, man. He might be good, but he also might just fail miserably because he can't create separation consistently. I love Jordan Tyson. I just don't know if it's worth even like scouting the first round wide receivers because I don't think the Dolphins are taking one.
I think I would be shocked if we don't take one on day 2.
I'd be shocked.
I could see one. I could see one in the third round with the picks they have in the third round. I could see them taking one because again, you need one. You need a guy who can win on the outside. You need a traditional X receiver who is not Nick Westbrook-Akine. God rest his soul. But like, I just don't know if like it's going to happen on day 2 or really early day 3. I think there's just some different possibilities there.
Yep. All right. And with that, guys, it has been about 90 minutes. I know a lot of people are getting ready for that Canes game. Bobby, Kev, thanks for joining us. Bobby, I'm assuming you guys are going live tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So definitely check out the dive bar tomorrow. We will keep I'm sure everybody will keep updated. I'm sure Bobby and Carpet Dinosaur will know before anybody else what the staff's going to look like. So
For sure.
just make sure you follow them. For the 1,200 people watching, make sure you go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. It does help us. Enjoy the rest of your night. Argue, celebrate, do whatever you want with the team, with the coaching decision we made. And I will end by saying what I said last week. A couple of years ago, everybody was dunking on Nick Sirianni and Dan Campbell, and they are considered 2 of the best coaches in the NFL right now.
Well, Brett, let's be clear. We made fun of the way that Liam Cohen said Duval for 3 straight weeks, and we all thought he was going to fail because of that. So
I still make fun of that.
I do too. It's the funniest thing ever.
Duval.
So, but Everett, thank you everybody for joining us. We will be doing more lives and probably a mock draft next week because I know Jordan's itching to do it.
I'm itching.
So have a good night, everybody. That is a wrap.
Go Hoosiers.
Go Canes.